Friends, good to see you. Welcome back to the show. My name is Dean. We've got a nice one for you today. And it's going to be a quick one. Dirty 30 is what we called it, where we get in and out. And we have someone on that likes to talk about the things that they do in this space. And today is no different. Brought to you by our friends over at Field Trip Health. Go to fieldtriphealth.ca if you're looking to get rid of treatment-resistant depression, anxiety, PTSD, ketamine-assisted therapy, psychedelic-assisted therapy, and psychotherapy. It is for you. 80% response rate, OCD, chronic pain, fibromyalgia. Listen, it works because you unwrap trauma, and they help you do that at Field Trip Health. Legally assisted psychotherapy with ketamine. Go to fieldtriphealth.ca today and just book online. That's all you got to do. It's absolutely free of charge. They're my friends and they want to be yours, and they will help you. Well, it's a weird time, as we know, right here in Canada, right? Like we're dealing with a brand new prime minister where we've got the same identity politics. Pierre Poilievre, Dollar Store Trump was on a bit of a run up until Donald Trump became the 47th president of the United States, second time around. And it is Armageddon in the United States. Trade wars are heating up. We had more developments today, and there's a gentleman that I've been wanting to talk to for quite some time, an independent journalist, best known for his in-depth political analysis, video journalism. He focuses on far-right media, Trumpism, GOP misinformation, formerly a reporter. He now runs one of my favorite Substack, New Public Notice. Must read. Anybody who's into the chaos of American politics and Trumpism. His Twitter X account was suspended, no longer. Yeah. Elon tagged him. We're going to talk about that a little bit. It's a go-to source for viral political clips. There is no one better in the business at capturing the moment the second it happens, and things are crazy down in the United States. That's where our guest joins us from. Please welcome to the program, independent journalist from Public Notice, A.T. Rupar. You can find him on Twitter. Please welcome Mr. Aaron Rupar. Mr. Rupar, this is a pleasure because I seriously started following you during the pandemic, and you were one of those go-to follows, and then you pivoted hard toward Trump, and I'm like, oh my God, my favorite guy is covering my least favorite guy. This is going to be great. How are you? Nice to see you.
I'm hanging in there. Thanks for having me on. It's really nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it's really good to talk to you too. Thanks for doing this. Before we get to anything, I do want to say you're the very first person I've ever had on the show who's been physically suspended by Elon Musk from Twitter. You're the first journalist I've had on the show.
That's been well, and that feels like a long time ago now, because that was December of 2022 when Elon was kind of new to running Twitter, and at the time that was a very shocking thing. We can get into the circumstances if you're curious, but it feels like
wasn't it over you put out like a file of some sort that he didn't want? It was like where his jet was or something like that. It was like a jet tracker.
Yeah, it was even stupider than that, because if you remember, there was an account on Twitter that tracked his private jet that he zapped, the idea being that it was endangering his safety, even though that's a stretch. But then the same account was still active on Facebook. And all I did was, make note that, while the Elon Jet account might be scrubbed from Twitter, if you want to follow it on Facebook, here's the link. And so me just posting the link to this Facebook account, he deemed to be posting his assassination coordinates, as he memorably put it. And so that's why I was suspended.
Assassination coordinates. You know what I love about all of these guys? None of them are victims, and nothing's hyperbolic ever. Nothing.
Right. Well, and of course, these jet trackers operate in all sorts of different contexts. I mean, I see them like for sports, where like if a coach is going to do an interview somewhere, or recruiting, so I mean, the idea that this endangers anybody is a stretch. But in hindsight, it was kind of a preview of what was to come, because back at that point, Elon wasn't regarded as being a super political person, but it's been pretty steady from there. You can go back to his early support for Ron DeSantis and kind of explicitly endorsing him, and then he dropped that pretty quick, and all the way now to being arguably right up there with Trump as the most powerful person in the country, if not possibly the world these days.
Oh, dude, and the most hated. Like, I have never seen a country and a society and different countries globally turn on an individual like the world is turning on Elon. Tesla sales in Germany down like 79%. Globally, they're off 60%. It is a full-on Elon hate fest. What do you make of the downturn in Elon's reputational capital, so to speak? I know it's all Doge related, which we'll get to, but have you ever seen anything like it? I mean, we expect it from Trump. But seeing this guy go from the richest guy in the world, maybe one of those beloved people in the world, to maybe being a global pariah in 2 years has been pretty special to watch.
Yeah, and I don't know if he was ever really beloved. I think a lot of people didn't really have a great sense of, what his business entailed and kind of knew him as like this somewhat flamboyant rich guy who tweeted a lot. But I certainly think he has served as a bit of a heat shield for Trump, where a lot of
Mhm.
Trump with a lot of these budget cuts that are super unpopular, instead of those kind of sticking to him, we can kind of blame Elon for that. So I think he's useful to Trump in that way, and then also as someone who can keep Republicans in line with his wealth, can keep them in line with the pressure that he can exert on his social media platform. And he does have kind of a cultish following that you see, especially on X. So I don't want to kind of dismiss that, but I don't think if you would have polled Elon Musk, a couple years ago, he would have gotten super favorable marks. It's just that it's a tough look when you're the richest person in the world and you're basically trying to take away people's health care and their social security payments. So, I do think that he's a very unpopular figure, but I think within that, there's some utility for Trump that he can, again, kind of use him as a heat shield.
Yeah, well, dude, some of the videos that you see are pretty crazy. What do you make of all the Tesla dealerships getting vandalized, cars getting lit on fire? Everybody's drawing like enormous fluorescent dicks on Cybertrucks too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're a progressive right now in the United States, you're feeling pretty powerless, kind of for obvious reasons. I mean, the election basically left Republicans here with full control of our federal government. And so, I think people are looking for ways to
Mhm,
kind of make their voices heard. And,
mhm.
obviously, Tesla is kind of the crown jewel of Elon Musk's portfolio. He's the CEO still. And so I think, it's a way to kind of vent displeasure, not only at the course of policy in the country, but at the fact that we're becoming, just an egregiously corrupt government here with, as we were kind of joking before we start recording, something that's happening later today here at the White House is Trump is apparently going to buy a Tesla and, do some sort of photo op driving one. And, this would have been unthinkable a decade ago. Like, the president's top advisor, who still is CEO of major companies, and have the president basically do like an infomercial of sorts. But we've become kind of numb to that, or it's been normalized. And so I think the Tesla protests are one way that people who feel like they're kind of cut out of the political process can make their voice heard in a way that's kind of compelling to the media, gets coverage. And obviously is angering Elon Musk, and kind of, it's concerning enough where Trump is stepping in to kind of help his buddy out by, promoting his car brand.
Yeah, and that's the thing that really shocked me today because, like, Elon Musk doesn't speak up for himself, and when he does, he's usually smoked off his ass at some symposium on stage with somebody wearing sunglasses or a bomber jacket, telling everybody to go fuck themselves, right? Which I find fascinating about him. But this latest iteration of Elon, it's almost like he's hiding. I don't know if you watched that. I think, well, you put it out on your Twitter feed yesterday. His interview with Larry Kudlow, which was hilarious, by the way, in the clip of Elon basically almost being brought to tears over the DDoS attack on Twitter yesterday by this group called Dark Storm, which apparently went after Elon Musk yesterday. You and I were trying to tweet each other. We couldn't because Twitter
Yeah.
was down because of this DDoS attack. And but the fascinating part for me was how he played the victim after the fact. I think he's lost something like 54% of his market cap, which is like $660 billion at Tesla. He said a few rocket ships crash over the past 4 of 8 rocket ships have crashed or just exploded in thin air over the past few months. Not only that, he's being universally vilified, as you have aptly stated, because the richest guy in the world is literally trying to take senior citizens' ability to take care of themselves away by cutting Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. But I don't. That clip yesterday struck me, where he had this demure attitude, and he was like, "All I'm trying to do is save the country." Like, I want your thoughts on that, because it's amazing how he can go from a chainsaw wielding psycho in sunglasses to this poor, downtrodden guy who's worth $500 billion going, "I'm just doing my best, guys. Help me
Yeah.
out here."
Yeah, I thought that was notable too. There's a couple bits of context here that I think are relevant. One was that, last Friday, the New York Times had a big piece on a blow up that apparently happened at a meeting in the White House where Musk was there and some of the cabinet secretaries were there, where apparently Trump basically, changed things so that now the firings that Doge has been doing, the unlawful kind of pillaging of agencies, is now going to be the purview of the actual cabinet secretaries. So it was kind of widely interpreted as being kind of a rebuke to Musk and sort of limiting his power a little bit. So I don't know if there's a little bit of him, with his tail between his legs, kind of feeling a little bit demoralized. I thought I picked up on some hints of that during that Fox interview
Yeah.
yesterday. And then, the other thing about Elon that's really kind of stood out to me as I've, just following a lot of the reporting things he said, is how worried he seems to be about his physical security. There was a story a few weeks ago about this woman, Ashley St. Clair, who apparently, mothered one of
His
Musk's,
baby mama.
one of
Yeah.
Musk's baby mamas is a good way to put it. And some of the texts that were sent back and forth, I think she maybe posted them. I can't remember how these became public, but one of the concerns that
Yeah, she
Musk
did.
was expressing to her was, huge concerns about her safety and his safety, where, basically they were talking about whether or not he was going to visit his child. And, he had all these worries about, physical safety, and I'm going to get you an apartment in New York, but you got to make sure no one knows where you are. And this, and it does seem like he's extremely.
Didn't he go on and say something like, he just went on and said something to the effect of like, I swear to God, I'm the #2 assassination target in the world, right behind Trump.
Yeah.
This is a matter of life and death, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
Same,
and
same,
and
same
honestly,
text.
it is.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me because I'm not sure if you spend any time on Blue Sky, but I've been posting a lot there as Twitter has kind of started circling the bowl for years now, really. But I am kind of I'll post things about Elon, and some of the replies will be kind of borderline. "Oh, I can't wait for someone to take him out," or there's a lot of kind of pent up, and you see this about towards Trump as well, where like these people certainly have
Yeah.
they are targets. So I don't want to I don't want to minimize that, but again, it comes with, I think there's just a lot of anger where people see this guy who's, the wealthiest person in the world. And, this kind of these illegal cuts that affect such a small part of the federal budget, just seems so, it's like almost something out of like some sort of, cheap movie from 50 years ago or something where, you wouldn't believe it if it wasn't real. And, but anyway, I mean, he seems very preoccupied with his physical safety. And so that I think kind of came through, some of his concerns about that, or how kind of downtrodden he feels during that interview, where he certainly wasn't exuding, kind of positive energy and optimism. At one point he mentioned something to the effect of like, I plan to keep working in the federal government unless someone stops me. And I almost kind of read that as, being kind of a nod towards Trump, maybe sidelining him or something like that. But I also think that these guys are kind of codependent at this point, where, Elon, he doesn't really need Trump, but Trump obviously makes him far more powerful than he ever has been with this kind of co-presidency situation that he has now. And then for Trump, Elon Musk, his wealth, the role that plays in keeping Republicans aligned, if he could fund like a primary challenge to them, and just the influence he has on social media, which I think was a huge factor in Trump winning last year. You can kind of see why both of them have a lot of investment and a lot on the line to try and make this work.
Yeah, totally. And I want to, speaking of making it work, I kind of want to pivot because Donald Trump is trying to really make tariffs work. Like he's really trying to convince everybody that tariffs are a great idea. And not only are they not a good idea, she's being like, everybody in the White House is being dog walked into the idea that tariffs are a tax on the people of that country. Today, Donald Trump truly escalated. And this is one of the first tweets, and I actually retweeted yours because you're always first. I don't know how you're first, but you're always first because you're always on it. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the province of Ontario, which is where I live, Doug Ford is our premier. He slapped, I call it an asshole tax on electricity going into the United States to 1.5 million homes of 25%. He's like, hey, listen, we're not dicking around anymore. 25% on electricity to 1.5 million homes in Michigan, New York, et cetera, et cetera. Donald Trump snapped overnight. Like, I mean, snapped, put out some stupid tweet, and then he put out this really long tweet. Based in Ontario, Canada placing a 25% tariff on electricity coming to the United States. I've instructed my Secretary of Commerce to add an additional 25% tariff on steel, aluminum coming into the United States. Highest tariffing nation anywhere we're not. Canada must immediately drop their anti-farmer tariff of 250% on dairy products, blah, 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 blah. He then goes on to threaten declaring a national emergency on electricity in the area affected, which is where our electricity goes. That's another dog whistle to possibly invading Canada. That's why national emergencies exist, so you have extraordinary powers. And then he said he's going to tariff all cars and he's going to bankrupt the automotive industry, and goes on to say it would be still more beautiful. You can avoid all this by just becoming the 51st state. Now, you as a journalist, as an independent guy, someone that does this every day, the amount of times that he's talked about Canada becoming a 51st state, the amount of times that he threatens Canada becoming 51st state, and I've listened to your podcast, so I understand at Substack. I understand that you don't think he's going to invade Canada. But what is the running narrative when you talk to other people in the United States about his hatred for Canada right now?
So I was thinking about this today because the Canada hatred, like, it was not mentioned once during the campaign. It's such an odd thing because, it's like
Yeah.
it was like sometime after the election for no apparent reason he started getting this bugaboo about Canada and being the 51st state and how Canada couldn't survive if it wasn't for the American economy, and they're kind of ripping us off. None of this, like, I had never heard Trump talk like this before, and so. I don't know where that came from. I mean, I'd be entirely guessing. You're right that I don't believe that we are going to invade Canada. Although I will say, just before we got on this call, there was a White House press briefing, and some of the rhetoric is pretty heated. Carolyn Levitt, who's the press secretary, said something about if Canada follows through, or if Ford, the premier of Ontario, follows through with the tariffs on electricity, there's going to be she said something to the effect of like very serious repercussions.
Grave consequences.
Yeah.
She said grave
right.
consequences.
That was brought me back to like the build up to the Iraq war or something, where it's like, oh my God.
There's going to be grave consequences.
Well, and there was even the bit, this was just yesterday, or maybe it was yesterday, where Kevin Hassett, who's economics advisor in the White House, was on TV saying, oh, Canada has been looking the other way to these fentanyl labs on the border, and, alleging that, it was very WMD-esque. Like this notion that there are,
you know what he said, which made me laugh? He was like, he goes, Canada's been taken over by Mexican cartels. I've seen pictures of police looking the other way at these massive fucking complexes that fire hose all kinds of fentanyl into the United States. I laughed out loud. Like, that's what we do here. We laugh out loud. Anyway, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No,
yes,
I mean, and I think actually, obviously the economic consequences are going to be real on both sides of the border, and it's going to hurt people. And so, I don't want to make too much of a laugh line out of it or kind of dismiss it. I mean, it is a real, beyond the rhetoric. I mean, there are real repercussions for people and real impacts that it's going to have. But I don't really know what Trump's endgame is with this one. I mean, it's very strange. I mean, at least like the Greenland one, depending on who you talk to, people will make a case that there is like a strategic rationale to that, as the Arctic becomes more of a zone of great power competition, we want more of a toehold. Like, I get that that's a very kind of like craven argument, but I understand why people make it. But, with Canada, I mean, Canada is not going to become a state. We're not going to go to war with Canada. So I just don't really see, beyond kind of poisoning the well of our relations. And, I do think that people kind of underestimate that aspect of Trump sometimes, where when you're trying to make sense of what he's doing, like, he really does not have American interests in mind with any of his policies. I mean, you look at, basically making all these concessions to Russia at a point, in the Ukraine war, where Russia is not in a good place overall. Like, why are we bailing them out? Why are we, saber rattling with Canada, with Mexico? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Trump, a lot of him is just kind of being reactive and reacting to situations in the way that he sees fit. So it could be as basic as this is just kind of a bee in his bonnet, and he's going hog wild with it, doesn't really care about the political repercussions, because although I think there's a chance he tries to run again illegally in a few years, he's not legally allowed to run again. So I don't really get it. I wish I had a better answer for you, but it's baffling to me. I don't really know why he's doing it. I don't know what the end game is.
Listen, it makes no difference to us. We just introduced a USD bond sale today. That was a lot of fun to watch. We're going to prop up our economy. Obviously, it's going to hurt our economy, but dude, like, this shocks me. I think you've lost 3% of your index on the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ, down another 700 points today. Does the average American understand that every time he threatens Canada and America loses a couple $1 trillion, that's Trump's doing? Like, it's got nothing to do with us. And the other thing is, I want to know, does the average American understand that we are not sending fentanyl by the truckload into the United States?
Well, on the second one first, I think the fentanyl issue is overplayed by Trump. Like, I'm not sure if you know this. I live in Minnesota, so I'm not that far away from the Canadian border, where allegedly all this fentanyl is coming in.
You a Wild fan? You Minnesota Wild fan?
I'm more of a
Vikings fan.
Yeah, I'm more of a basketball, baseball, football guy. Like hockey, I appreciate, but I'm not. Okay. I wouldn't consider myself like a diehard Wild fan. I did go to one game this year, actually, but in any event, so the fentanyl stuff, I don't really hear that like in the communities as much, but it's obviously a big thing that the White House talks about a lot. And of course, if you talk to families who have lost a loved one or had their family affected by addiction, like, you're going to get different responses on that. But, I live in a pretty red part of Minnesota presently because that's where I'm from. And I don't hear a lot of that. So I don't think anybody really takes that seriously. I think, a lot of the econ people who go on TV and have to defend what the administration is doing have cited that, but I think it's kind of pretextual. And some of that has to do with the laws here where the executive can implement tariffs for certain policy reasons, including, if there's like a security emergency along the lines of like, drugs and things like that. Whereas I don't think that he has as much latitude when it's purely economic. So I think there's a little bit of butt covering going on with that. But then on the market question, I mean, I would like to believe that people have enough savviness to kind of, add 2 and 2 together to get to 4. But, we just lived through this election that was honestly one of the dumbest campaigns. The fact that Trump was even a serious contender, let alone winning a plurality of the votes in every swing state. I don't think I'll ever understand really how that happened. And so that's, there's a lot of,
we can't either.
Yeah. With a lot of the conversations that like Democrats have here about like, oh, messaging this or, are Democrats doing enough of that? And, to me, it's kind of whistling past the graveyard where we just have a very unsophisticated electorate here who is very easily manipulated. And, we saw that in 2016. We saw it in 2024. I've lost faith that we can make kind of responsible choices. And so when you ask, well, are people able to, turn on the news and see that the Dow is down and understand that this is because of Trump's trade policies? Like, I don't know. I mean, some can. But I don't know. I mean, again, he got 77 million votes after a campaign that was an absolutely reprehensible campaign. And I chalk a lot of that up to low information voters, people who went and voted. They went and they voted based on the fact that, inflation annoyed them or, kind of minor things that even if inflation annoyed you, Biden did a very good job relative to other countries around the world in bringing the economy out of COVID. But to even make that level of inference and do like a comparative analysis with other countries is too much to ask of American voters, sadly.
Yeah, we've got those voters here too.
Yeah.
They're seeing the night end and the day come with the election of Mark Carney. He's called the MAGA killer up here. Don't know if you know that. We've got a new prime minister who's like an economic whiz in charge of the Bank of Canada, Bank of England. Put out a tweet today, and he's basically like, "Hey, dude, these threats won't matter. We're going to win this trade war, and we're not overly concerned about it." How do you continue? Because you're one of the most I don't know where you get the bandwidth from. The average person that is on Twitter all day, on social media all day, covering the mung of a Trump administration, the negativity around how he acts, the lies, the gaslighting, the fire hosing. And you're probably close to the same vintage as me, where and I'm giving myself credit. I know you're much younger than me, but you're probably from the same vintage as me, where 1 + 1 makes 2 and it makes sense. And if someone publicly says 1 + 1 makes 3, you get challenged and that person goes home with their tail between the legs. But to that point, Carolyn Levitt today talking about how tariffs are not a tax, Trump going on about fentanyl. Even yesterday, Elon Musk talking about this DDoS attack being probably from Ukraine. Like, I mean, just which has since been borne out as a complete lie and completely negative. But how does someone like you go from, being a journalist who likes to write and likes to talk to people? I know you still do it with Public Notice over at Substack. How do you keep your head in the game when you do this for 8 to 10 hours a day, scraping clips of assholes being assholes, trying to explain to people what the fucking truth and the fact of the matter is?
It's not easy. I mean, yeah, you're right that I've been doing this a long time, and I guess I should say, the 2024 election to me was really kind of a big blow in that respect, where I'd felt all along, I started covering national politics, and I'd been a journalist prior to that, but in February of 2016, I moved out to DC. I was working for this outlet called Think Progress, and so right away I started covering Trump because that was right around the time that he was kind of cleaning up during the Republican primary and was becoming, the presumptive nominee. And then, when he won in 2016, it still felt pretty fluky overall. It was kind of like, well, the media coverage was terrible and Comey screwed Hillary and, and he lost the popular vote. And there were all these kind of, but things that you could, kind of qualify his presidency with. Then, as I was doing this work more intensively, 2018, Democrats did really well. 2020, Democrats did really well. 2022, Democrats overperformed relative to how the midterms usually go. So, it kind of felt like progress was being made, and I was confident until basically election night that Trump would lose this last time around. But the fact that he won really did kind of throw me for a loop, and it has been, it's taken some adjustment. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's important for people to know what their government is doing, what their officials are saying, how they're justifying actions that they're taking, and I still, there's a part of me, it's a less of a part than it used to be, that feels kind of blessed to cover historic times, or grateful, I guess maybe is a better word, to have the opportunity to do this for a living. But it has gotten heavier and heavier, and I'm less optimistic about the future than I was 6 months ago. That's for sure. So to be completely honest with you, I mean, I get up and just kind of do it because it's my job, and I do think it's important, but I wouldn't say there's the same enthusiasm there that there would have been 10 years ago. That's for sure.
Yeah, dude, I feel it. Like, there's days where I get up and I'm like, what kind of negativity am I going to cover today? What is your day like now? Like, you tell me. Because I watch you do your thing, and I'm like, this guy's got to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, turn on Snap Stream, and go, oh, here we go.
Yeah,
like he has to during a Trump admin.
Yeah, well, I don't get up that early. I mean, we have two little kids, so they're 2 and 4, so they usually sleep in until about like 7:45, and so then by the time I get up with them, we don't get them out the door for an hour, and so that hour it's pretty hard to get anything done. But then when I get home, I have a routine that I kind of rip through, where I go through Maria Bartiromo's show, I go through CNN, Morning Joe, CNBC. And I basically scroll through to see who the guests are, because that's usually where the news is occurring, is if they have a newsworthy guest, or, if there's a big news event, like Maria Bartiromo on the monthly jobs report is always a must watch, because you're going to get, when Biden was president, you'd always get the negative spin that, oh, this jobs report is great, but the economy's terrible. And then last week, with the report being pretty bad for Trump, it was the opposite, where it was, oh, this jobs report's just a blip.
She got so mad.
Yeah. So, that's always kind of entertaining. But yeah, I mean, so I have it kind of down to a system where I'm at least on top of like all of the big things that happen on cable. And if there are hearings, today, later today, there's a big vote on the budget here, which is kind of a politically interesting item, in that, it seems like Republicans are going to vote. They can only lose one vote. Thomas Massey has already announced he's not voting for it. Every other Republican has to vote for this budget, which basically just kicks the can down the road for about 8 months or so. And normally this would not be something that Republicans would be able to do, because you have the far right people who hate spending, and so they're never going to vote for the spending levels as they have been, over the previous budget period. But it seems like Trump has successfully bullied all the Republicans to stay in line, which again I think speaks to some of the stuff we were talking about earlier with Elon Musk having power to kind of threaten these Republicans, and just the fear that they have for their own seats and being primary. But anyway, so my day is kind of responsive to events like that. But it's a lot of just kind of like grinding through footage, more or less, transcripts, to try and find clips that are of interest. And then of course I have to prep the newsletter every day as well. So it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of work, I guess. End of sentence.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Where do you fit in counseling to that schedule? Like decompression counseling.
I probably should. I probably should work some time in for that. I mean, I am very blessed to have an amazing family, and so, and I take it pretty easy on them too. I'm really, given the type of work that I do, I'm pretty well adjusted to it at this point. I think having done it for so long helps, but I have kind of thought, like, when I moved out to DC in 2016, I was in my early 30s, and there was kind of this. It felt like a big career break. It was like, wow, this is exciting, going to DC to cover politics. Obama was the president. It was like, and I just can't imagine kind of being, if I was like 30 years old right now and kind of working my way up in journalism, like the thought of covering national politics right now would be like pretty depressing. Like, I wonder, if you told your friends or family, like, oh, I got this job offer to go cover politics in DC. I mean, I think people would kind of roll their eyes, because it's such a shit show now, but that wasn't the case back then. Yeah. So, that is kind of an interesting difference even over the last decade.
Oh, for sure it is. And just how visceral we are, right? We didn't have readily available video content that replaces spoken content. You do such an amazing job of it, and I would encourage everybody to follow Aaron wherever you can find him. Not only is he maybe the best follow online, where you can be up to date within minutes of something going on, and there's always something going on with the Trump administration in the United States. At AT Rupar is where you can find him on Twitter, Substack, Public Notice, and of course Aaron Rupar. He's got a YouTube channel as well. He's also on Instagram at Threads at AT Rupar, and he's one of the best, and does this work out of the obviously the kindness of his heart, trying to educate a nation, but you're doing much more than that. Dude, thanks so much for doing this and giving me 30 minutes of your time today. I know you're incredibly busy. Good luck covering the televised Tesla infomercial with Donald Trump today. Good luck covering the budget vote. I hope they shut down the government. It's maybe just wishful thinking as a Canadian, and wish us luck.
Yeah, Dean. No, I'm with you guys on this one. For sure. I sympathize and support the Canadian cause here, and it's amazing to finally chat with you. I know we've interacted online quite a bit, and I'd be happy to do it again sometime down the line.
Anytime, Aaron. Really appreciate it. You go have a great day, pal.
Take care.
Talk to you soon. Aaron Rupar, ladies and gentlemen, independent journalist. Public Notice is the name of his Substack. You can find him on Twitter as well. That guy is a fire hose of like Trump shit. Not just Trump shit, but like he covers absolutely fucking everything. Everything. Anything that Trump does, anything his administration does, which is ridiculous, which happens multiple times a day, every single day, 7 days a week. Can you imagine being buried under that? I couldn't. Wouldn't be able to do it. I get a break. I get to talk about sports sometimes, get to talk about life issues, psychedelic assisted therapy, psychedelics. That guy gets no breaks, no days off, just every day covering insanity, pure negative insanity. You know how many of us are like, I can't watch the news anymore. Dude, like, is in it 8 hours a day. Aaron Rupar. Appreciate him. It was awesome. Grave consequences for Canada. How could you not just laugh at this fucking idiot anymore? I can't even take him seriously. That's the truth. That's why I'm able to do this content now. That's why I think a lot of us are able to like stick with it this time. First time around, we're like, oh, this is terrible. We've seen this. He's just Captain Threats does nothing. He's like a paper tiger of idiocy. Canada, relax. You're going to be just fine. Mark Carney's in the house. Have a great day, everybody. Really appreciate you spending some time with us. Thanks to my friend Aaron Rupar for joining us as well to update us from the United States, talk a little bit of shop, take a half an hour just to shoot the shit. And thanks to our friends at Field Trip Health for making this possible. fieldtriphealth.ca. Go there today. My friends at Field Trip Health have been helping people with treatment-resistant depression for quite some time. Years, as a matter of fact. Not only do they help people with treatment-resistant depression, they help people with psychedelic-assisted therapy in a variety of ways, and you can book your discovery call now. A lot of people struggle with depression, anxiety, PTSD. A lot of people struggle with pain management. Not only do they have medicine like ketamine, they've also got MDMA, psilocybin, because they do psychedelic-assisted therapy, and they do it in a variety of locations across this country. They've got clinics in Ontario, Montreal, Vancouver, Regina. Now they also have at-home ketamine therapy. So listen, if you can't get out and you've been struggling under that cage of depression, that fog of PTSD, the stress of anxiety, and you've been on SSRIs through the entire thing, and you can't get any help, my friends at Field Trip health.ca have ketamine assisted therapy, and it's got an 80 to 86% success rate. Sometimes it works within hours. Not only is the ketamine assisted therapy medically supervised, it's also in an incredibly supportive environment, specifically if you go in for the in-studio or the in-clinic treatment. Now, listen, it works for addiction, chronic pain, eating disorders, OCD, and it unwraps trauma so that you can actually get busy doing it. If you haven't done ketamine or psychedelic-assisted therapy yet, trust me, they've helped thousands of people. They help me, they help my friends, and they can help you too, because it is a personalized treatment plan to help you achieve your unique outcomes, whether you want to discover self-love, find hope and purpose, or you just want to heal from trauma, become more connected to different aspects of your life. Their treatment will help you feel better, faster, for longer. Go to fieldtriphealth.ca for more details. Book your discovery call. It's absolutely free of charge. In Canada, we take taking care of you very seriously. That is why ketamine-assisted therapy is not just medically supervised, it is legal, and it is life-changing for so many people. Would highly encourage you to try it if you get a chance. Again, fieldtriphealth.ca. Check them out today online. fieldtriphealth.ca. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Here's the extra. Bye.